Hey, what's going on? So this is going to be a weekly review. Week 1 December here, right? Saturday, around 7:30. So yeah, man. Starting off with the yes here. Not a whole lot to say about this week. Pretty high resistance week. Um, it is interesting, right? Just comparing, the previous few weeks we've looked at, right? That those final couple weeks of November versus this first week of December here. Very high resistance. Um, So yeah, kind of interesting, right? It's that difference in delivery. Either way, Monday weekly low, Friday weekly high. Pretty interesting. Again, with that first hour, excuse me, first hour candle for Monday here, but specifically really has that weekly low. So very, very fascinating. Again, right? Very high resistance, very small range overall. Really, when I see a week like this or any type of delivery in this fashion, it's really like, okay, this was a consolidation week, so we're expecting expansion potentially next week. See that consolidation to expansion to retracement. Very interesting example of AM expansion, PM, PM reversal relative to the intraday narrative, but really as PM retracement. So pretty interesting overall there for Monday. Same sort of look here on Tuesday, consolidation to expansion, retracement to expansion, right? And that expansion doesn't really have to be defined as trading to and through that high, or does it, right? And that's sort of your own. I don't know. I ultimately leave that up to the operator of the system or whatever. But personally, this does not matter. It's the same concept as like AM expansion, PM reversal. It could really be AM expansion, PM retracement. That could be that retracement to expansion, or it could even technically be seen as a sort of like retracement back to consolidation. But intraday, like that is a real retracement into that daily range deep discount. So we expand away from that. So it's kind of where my head's at as far as the retracement to expansion there for Tuesday. Again, all of this within the high resistance, like just very high resistance. I would say Monday was the only day that was like kind of a clean delivery. Um, Consolidation, expansion, reversal. Pretty interesting intra-week, right? But again, very high resistance. Um, Thursday, I would say this is like the first day that we've seen that has essentially only been a consolidation day. So that in of itself is pretty fascinating, right? As we go through and study the daily delivery as it relates to this IPTA price engine. Um, you know, Literally like 90% of the days are at least a consolidation to expansion, right? So we literally just see this like high resistance chop. Is this a retracement into previous days range? I leave that up to, again, like there is sort of a subjective framing of the price delivery, but at the same time, like so high resistance that this is ultimately consolidation. It is interesting as well. We'll get into the Asian session at the end of the video, but how we expand essentially out of the consolidation, like the consolidation day during the Asian session. So that in and of itself could be its own sort of like thing to look for. Um, yeah, very interesting. Like within this high resistance week, within this consolidation week, see this day that is literally just consolidation. So very interesting. Same look for Friday here. So, I would just kind of would step aside. Um, and talk like mentality or whatever. In these types of weeks, the goal is to be able to, or even in these types of days, right? Like if you look, if you like sit down intending to potentially trade, you could bring like, this expectation of smooth delivery to the market on the day that you happen to sit down and trade. And it could literally be like a consolidation day. And so being able to, essentially recognize high resistance and not need to trade is something that is super, I mean, it's super zen, but at the same time too, it's about really like understanding why that is tactically the best move as well. Either way, that's what, viewing this previous week's range, especially these past, or these this Thursday and this Friday, that's really what I reflect on here. So getting into these daily ranges, right? Pretty fascinating. Um, ADR, average daily range, is something new, essentially just collect that could be done over a, 3 month snapshot, monthly snapshot, 5 day snapshot. I don't know. Very interesting as far as the, this like this high of day, literally returning like just to weekly open, putting in that high of day at 1300 during seventh macro day, 1400 candle, changing the state of delivery intra like hour, right? And we really retrace into the discount of the daily range. So that in of itself is very, very fascinating. I mean, yeah, like I am for some reason very fascinated by the first hour low of day, first hour high of day concept. Sort of like a tilting of sort of like the tone of the day. It always, I mean, this ultimately was like aggressive bullishness in the AM. Um, and so it's always interesting to see like that and then any retracement that follows and like just the respect shown um, to that level. I guess really why I find it so fascinating is because it doesn't fall within a session, right? It doesn't fall within the London session or the Asian session technically. It's the first hour of the New York midnight algorithm, if you will. Um, and so that in of itself is just fascinating. But either way, that as its own sort of collection, what percentage of the days has that, low of day if bullish formed during that first hour, inverse if bearish, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, that could be applied for any candle. Um, but either way, that's where my head's at as I, collect this data long term and, ultimately like apply it to spreadsheets, et cetera. But yeah, very fascinating high of day as well, right? We talked about that algorithmic low of day, but very interesting high of day as well. And all of that within this like very small daily range. So yeah, again, around that 50 handle daily range here for Tuesday. Um, as far as the overnight, situations and overnight anticipations, it is always interesting to potentially see, right? We're talking about the first hour here with New York midnight and or some type of London high or low of day. So that in of itself is its own classification of a day as well. Pretty fascinating. And we see that London consolidation to expansion. So that in of itself, another example of the delivery, potentially even as like retracement into previous day's range, right? We're in that discounted previous day's range. Consolidation to expansion, expanding to and through previous day's high. Then we retrace into that intraday range. So very, very fascinating overall here. Um, And simultaneously, like the AMP or excuse me, AM high of day, low of day, if you will. So pretty fascinating as well. Um, yeah, pretty high resistance though. At the same time, like gets kind of wonky after the like just consolidation, really, right? But then at the same time too, we were saying earlier, like, isn't it sort of retracement to expansion? So it ultimately depends on like, there is the price engine delivery, and then there's sort of high resistance, low resistance, and that's I think its own sort of factors. Like you're looking for the price engine delivery in low resistance conditions. Um, so yeah, I think that's a very interesting little nuance there. Either way, going on to Wednesday here, we see that high of day at 1500, low of day at 9. So very interesting. Um, Always interesting again, like three different types of days of potential like putting in play like in this case like these bullish days, but putting in place that low of day and then like going higher as like low of day first hour, low of day during London, low of day during New York AM, and or that like low of day at 9. That in and of itself is always interesting. We sort of understand like the potential. I mean, I really don't know, right? We're off the 1 hour here, and I don't remember off the lower time frames, but potential of the 9:30 opening essentially doing like that sell side stop hunt slash inducement of the breakout shorts, putting in that low of day, ultimately kind of similar to the um, Monday New York midnight candle, right? We're like going lower, inducing the breakout shorts, and then ultimately like reversing on this, Sunday Asian here. Um, but either way, same sort of look here as far as that potential inducement. I'm really just kind of curious what happened here intraday, off of the 5 minute, 15 minute, etc. Um, but that move then leading to the New York PM high. So pretty fascinating as its own sort of like printing of a daily range, low of day during that opening range, right? Quote unquote opening range, 9:30 to 10, and then high of day New York PM. So pretty interesting AM expansion potentially, right? I mean, first hour here, PM expansion, but then really it ultimately like PM consolidation, the premium. So I mean, really, ultimately depending on how you label that. Um, Again, with the consolidation, right? Pretty fascinating though, nonetheless. The same sort of concept we're looking at here with high, like that, opening range induction, right? Potential opening, then we trade to and through previous day's high, inducing breakout traders long, and then essentially just like running on that intraday. And we do, we put in that expansion on the daily range, retrace, and then expand. So within the consolidation on the lower time frames, there is that offered, right? So that's where we really get into the fractal nature of this price engine delivery in the first place. So yeah, something to, just I guess reflect on or whatever. Friday, same sort of look ultimately. Induction of the breakout shorts, trading to and through, ultimately like that Asian low there, repricing the busy here as well. Well, that's actually not a busy. But there was an extra candle right here. I was kind of reading. It's like hash mark, if you will. Um, but either way, pretty fascinating induction of the breakout shorts, right? Trading to and through that Asian low, putting in place that low of day, and then expanding higher off of that move to and through right that intraday high. So just that expansion of the daily range there. So I mean, when you really look into it, and you get on the lower time frames, there is still delivery, but it's like, when you take this 3 week look back perspective, it's understanding like relative delivery and simply understanding like how high resistance this was compared to you know, the past handful of weeks. So now we'll go look at NQ, same situation, right? These, intermarket analysis perspectives, understanding how correlated these markets are. So yeah, pretty fascinating. Same looks, right? Literally same deliveries. And so, when you really like get into it, you do see sort of relative differences. Like example here for Tuesday, the retracement here after this move, like consolidation, expansion, retracement, expansion. The expansion that follows the retracement is almost like more pronounced here on NASDAQ versus ES, right? See that retracement expansion, which is kind of where we were, oh, maybe this is more of a consolidation, et cetera, et cetera. Interesting here though on NASDAQ, like that is, I would say, retracement to expansion. That's not even necessarily a consolidation, right? And so that can sort of be seen there in the difference. Um, and really a true like intermarket analysis perspective. So yeah, here for Wednesday, same look, consolidation, expansion, reversal. Pretty fascinating. Again, with the Thursday, Friday, right? Just these heavy consolidations, man. Pretty fascinating here as well. If you recall, ES Hive Day was put in place at 1300. NASDAQ here was put in place at 12. So that in of itself, another example of like that intermarket analysis and ultimately like, divergence. This is from the other week. There it is. I forgot to collect that Thursday data there. Either way, we'll get into the Asian session here, right? Pretty interesting, the Sunday Asian. Really that expansion, consolidation, expansion, right, to close out last week. In reversal, but I called it, expansion because it was like the opening of the week. We expanded and then really went to consolidation. So either way, pretty fascinating, pretty large Asian session as well. Really the ideal is seeing that Asian consolidation, understanding how it is essentially the engineering of liquidity for whatever is going to occur. This like immediate upcoming day, that's almost that could be the narrative. So yeah, a lot of consolidation, a lot, but again, that expansion, we were talking about that, right? Thursday, consolidation during the day, and then we see that Thursday Asian expansion. Potentially just something to, watch out for in the future. So yeah, man, thanks for watching.